G'day guys, Steve Morgan here. Fishing Monthly Magazine's and Australian Bass Tournaments. Caught up again with Carl Jocumsen. Carl, we've been catching up a bit towards the end of this year. It's been pretty exciting in the bass scene, hasn't it?
Yeah, lots happening. Definitely lots happening on the USA scene here, but all good things.
You have just finished fishing the Bassmaster Open Championship on Table Rock Lake. We enjoyed watching you live from Australia in various parts. We were having a good fish down at the Australian Open while that was on. Run us through the ups and downs of that championship. It looks like a fair bit was going on.
Yeah, definitely sort of licking my wounds a little bit the last couple of days. Just going to be one of those ones where I just missed opportunities, a real big, one of the biggest opportunities in my career so far, and just let it slip through my fingers. But had a great practice. Cold weather came in. It's coming into autumn over here now, and all sorts of stuff changes. The fishing gets really tough, but it kind of suits me. I'd fished Table Rock quite a bit. It's a clear, rocky lake. It's everything that I like in a US lake. I've done well there before, some top 20s and stuff. I got on a really good deal, but conditions just changed every single day. And on the first day, I kind of put myself behind the 8-ball. I had a 15-inch fish that I was measuring for 5 minutes. It's one that I would normally keep, and for some reason it's a 2.25-pound spot. I let it go early in the day, and then I end up weighing in 4 for 7.12. So I'm sitting in 19th. I should have, with that fish, I would have been inside the top, I think, about 6. And would have been right where I need to be. So now I'm in 19th, well behind the 8-ball, but still on Table Rock. I knew with the changing conditions that, a lot can happen. So next day, torrential rain from daylight till finish. No wind, but just heavy rain all day, cold conditions. And I ran through everything that I knew, and I end up having 4 fish with about an hour and a half to go. And it's a really good big bait lake. I've caught really good bass on a glide bait, a big swim bait, and back in the day on the A-rig when we were allowed to use it. And I got quite a few bites in practice, but when it's raining and cloudy, it's not good conditions for that. But with an hour and a half to go and 4 fish in the well, and if I come second in the tournament, I get paid $600. And if I come last at $600, I had to win. It was win or nothing, because I was so far down in the AOY points. And I said, well, if I'm gonna get beat, I'm gonna get beat swinging. And I picked up the glide bait and started throwing it. And to my surprise, with those conditions, they were on it. And after catching a few and getting a lot of follows and bites, I end up hooking a 6-pounder. That kind of the rule with a big bait like that is you don't let them fight. You got to trust that everything's going to hold. You crank down on them. I got a Miller Rods Dream Freak with a Tranx 5.8 to 1, 25 and 30 pounds straight through fluorocarbon, and you just wind down on them and swing. You just swing them into the boat. You don't let them fight at all, because that lure's so heavy. When they jump, they got a really good chance. And when it ate the bait so close to the boat, I could see only one hook was in it, but that's sometimes enough to hang on to them. And I grabbed the rod to swing it, and I just hesitated for a second, and I turned the fish, and then I turned it again, and I went to boat flip it again, and that's when it jumped and it threw that bait. And that was a heartbreaker. And so it took a little bit, but I got over it, and I just fished to the death. And on my final cast of the day with that glide bait, I caught a 4 3/4, and boat flipped it, threw it in the well, ran back, and I snuck in that 12 cut and made the final day to give it one last shot.
It was it's amazing how one fish can change an entire season, can't it? And 99 times out of 100, when you were social fishing, you'd probably boat flip that, no worries, and not even think about it falling off, wouldn't you?
Yeah, no, definitely, and that's just how you got to be. And sometimes I don't think anything about luck or getting unlucky. Like, I 100% believe when a fish comes off, it's totally your fault. It's something you did. It's the line, the hook set. It's in something that wasn't right. It's never just, man, I got unlucky and lost it. And I lost that fish totally was my fault. Like, watching it back, I watch where I grab the rod and I go to boat flip it. And, if it came off at the boat, it came off at the boat. But I put the odds back in the fish's favour when I didn't boat flip it on that first one, and it's just something that I've learned to do. And I did it at Champlain this year to make the top 12 cut at that open. I boat flipped a 5.5 and a 6.5 back to back on the big bait, and I just trusted everything was going to hold and boat flipped them in. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. But unfortunately, this one didn't. But it kept my hopes alive going into day 3. Also just representing my sponsors on the final day, the championship, and weighing in at the biggest Bass Pro shops in America in Springfield was all pretty cool. But I went out there not thinking like that, I didn't have a shot. I went out there like I'm in this at 100%, and if they eat that big bait, I had a good shot at winning.
Yep. No, we all enjoyed watching you, and we enjoyed watching you go live as well. Great to see Bass letting you go live in such a big event. 2019, it's been a tumultuous year for pro bass fishing in the US. Where are you at the moment with where you're going to fish next year?
So I've making the championship and finishing where I did in AOY. I've got the Bassmaster Elite invite. So they've given me the invite to fish for 2019, and I've got until the 31st of this month to figure out what I'm going to do. So Kayla and I are basically sitting down and talking and just weighing up exactly where we think the industry's at, where the tournament situations are at. We love FLW. We've they've helped us get back on track, and it's been an incredible 2 years over there. Bass is where I started in the US, and, they just have given me so much from the start, and they have the classic and everything. So a lot of opportunities now. No co-anglers at FLW, good payments, and then on the elites, you got everyone's getting the first time in history that every angler will be paid no matter where you come, and they've stepped up their game, and the coverage is insane over there. So there's a lot of amazing options in both ways, and we're still sitting on it. We've got the FLW Opens Championship coming up next week, and we're basically probably going to decide just before then and make our decision.
Oh, I'm sure we'll have another chat at that point, mate, because I know there's a lot of your fans, both in Australia and stateside, that are really keen to see where you end up in 2019. We just had a really exciting event back here in Australia. We had an event at Glenbourne called the Bass Australian Open, and you won't believe this, I reckon the entire field had half-ounce skirted jigs on, flipping timber and dragging it down banks for Australian bass. Do you believe that?
Wow, that is awesome. That is cool. At Glenbourne.
At Glenbourne, and it was the lake's down a bit. There's basically no weed left there at all, and the water temp just hit the temperature where all the crayfish come out and start feeding. So there's not many shrimp for them to eat, not much bait fish, but plenty of crays. And the skirted jig bite was off the charts, and I'm sure you've seen the results from it. A guy who caught a limit came like 46th or something like that. So it's fishing as good as it ever has, I think.
Yeah, Phelpsy did good. It looks like the weights were pretty solid at the top there too, but I'm glad to see Phelpsy win. I reckon that's awesome.
Now, just for the Australians' benefit, we're not experts at fishing rubber jigs. Well, Phelpsy probably is, but I know it was a big learning curve for me. Give us a couple of tips on fishing half-ounce jigs with small hooks in them with trailers for bass. Like, I know that a fish is a fish eating a crayfish. What are your tips you can give us to catch more fish on jigs for Australian bass-sized fish?
When you get down to those micro, the smaller style jigs and smaller hooks, I do use them on a spin rod and reel, 2,500 size Shimano. On a reasonably heavy rod, I use a Millerod Spin Freak. It's still soft in the tip, but it has a bit more guts. 8 pound braid with, you know, an 8 to 12 pound leader is usually good for me for a finesse style setup. But you know, it's a lot of the time with a jig on a bait caster, it's all about letting them eat it, and it's all about that hook set. When they first pick up the jig, generally you don't want to have any tight line on them at all. So what you'll see me do is the second I get that bite is drop my rod tip back, have total slack line, and then it'll sort of be almost a 2 count, and then I'm setting the hook without them feeling any pressure. So it's just like a sort of a bow, letting go of a bow. It's just like bang, and that hook just hits them. But honestly, I don't know if I've ever caught a bass, you know, fishing a jig, an Australian bass fishing a jig like that. So I'm kind of interested to get home. I don't know whether they're picking them up and holding onto them, or they're doing the typical Australian bass thing and like you get like a half a second bite and it's all over if you miss them.
Oh no, it's they're scoffing it and they're swimming off. Yeah, you see the line just swimming away. It's like, that's weird. That's like largemouths.
Perfect. Yeah, that's the deal. So definitely scent. You know, scent is a huge thing on jigs. Like I don't throw a jig without like a lot of scent on it, especially when it gets cold. But they're not rushing in and eating it. Majority of the time, they're really nosing right in on it, and it has to do everything right before they'll eat it. So you want a really good scent coming off there to help them bite it, hold onto it. And then with the jig, the most important thing is the trailer. So you basically got so many different trailers that you can run on that jig, and they either want no movement at all, like a chunk style, or just a claw style that's going to have no vibration, or they want something that has a lot of vibration. And so usually I'll mix it up to see which one they want best.
There you go. Some good tips there for Australian anglers wanting to get in on this great jig bite, which is happening at Glenbourne at the moment.
Awesome.
One final thing, Carl. You're out at the moment. You know, you've sort of got one event to go. You're chasing up your sponsors for next season. How have your sponsors been with your success this season? You know, they've stuck through you through thick and thin for a lot of these guys. They must be excited that you've had such a good year.
Yeah, for sure. With this, you know, just everything that's going on, and you know, at the start of the year, through halfway, we had John Ziola with us, and he just provided some amazing content and incredible footage. And then we've had Bud and you know, quite a few guys just, and even just Kayla's getting so good at all of her shots and her video, and plus just having the you know, having our best year yet. And you know, a lot of it, when I want to do well, it's not as so much for me and Kayla. You know, a lot of it is, but I want to do it for my sponsors and stuff that have just backed me through like the real tough times, and you know, they just continually support me, and I just, you know, want to have that great breakout year so they really, you know, benefit from it as well. But they've just stuck by me so well. My sponsors honestly feel like family. You know, I talk to them all, and they're just great friends. And next year it looks like it's going to be definitely the most exciting one of all.
Is that because you recently got engaged?
Yeah, that's a big one for sure.
Tell us that story, mate, before we take off. When, where, how? Tell us about it.
Well, we were fishing, of course. No, Kayla had no idea. She did not have a clue, and we were at Kayla's at her home in Idaho, and it's just really beautiful up there. And we took her dad's 2 4-wheelers down to the Coeur d'Alene River, which is just an incredible place, and it's kind of somewhere that's special to Kayla. She grew up there, sort of lived there her whole life, and we just rode the river all through the mountains and stuff. Beautiful weather, had Roo with us, and we caught trout the whole way along, and just had an awesome day. And then that's where I did it in a little remote spot there, fishing on the river, and she had no idea, so it was pretty cool. It was an awesome day.
And she obviously said yes, mate, so it was the right presentation.
Yep. Yeah, Must have finessed it perfectly.
All right, mate. Well, congratulations from myself and all of your Aussie fans, mate. We look forward to catching up with you in a few weeks, possibly just after that FLW Team Championship.
Yep. Sounds good, mate. Thanks for the chat.
Cheers, mate.